Welcome to Phantom Tabletop Gaming. I'm Mason, this is Eddie, and those are words that I haven't said in quite some time. How you doing tonight, Eddie?
I'm doing pretty good. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while. But rather than talk about boring stuff like why we've been on hiatus, let's talk about exciting things in nerd culture.
Hmm.
Um, so Wizards of the Coast had a thing this week, and that thing had some news that was particularly interesting. And for us, I think what we wanted to talk about was the announcement of One D&D.
Yeah, no, the it was freaking awesome actually. I'm really kind of neat stuff that they dropped on us, so I'm excited to kind of get into it.
Yeah, I'm super duper excited about it, and it comes at a really cool time. So we played fifth edition for years and really loved it, and but we actually kind of got a little tired of it, and we've been on break from D&D in our home game for a few years now. And literally this week we decided, you know what, I want to dust off the old fifth edition, and we are planning for a new campaign. And then like the next day, I think it was, they
Yeah,
announced one D&D. So I guess Wizards of the Coast like heard that we were coming back, and they were like, you know what, let's throw these guys a bone.
yeah, it was definitely because of us. You're welcome, world, because we
Yeah,
decided we wanted to
you're
play again. They decided, you know what, they're gonna drop this for you. So glad we could be of service to the gaming community.
yeah.
Um,
So let's talk for a second about what one D&D is and what it's not. So the
well,
biggest thing was what it's not is it's not a new edition of Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah, that was their big push, right? Was it's not a sixth edition, it is fifth edition extension, right? So, which is really neat because honestly, like fifth edition rules are, my complaint with fifth edition has never been the rule set. It was always, if you
Yeah,
watched our previous videos, it was like we said it before. It's always been like, that's the lack of options and
there's
creativity.
just
Like
not
you,
enough options. Yeah.
yeah, which just according to what they're saying, gonna be a fix. How freaking awesome!
So I think one D&D is Wizards showing that they've learned a lesson. So, you know, third edition was beloved,
Hmm.
and when fourth edition came out, they did a radical overhaul to the rules.
Yeah,
And it fractured their player base. There was people that loved fourth edition, and there was people that really hated it. And so much so that they actually created a competitor for themselves. Like if fourth edition wasn't such a radical departure from what third edition was, you probably never would have seen a game like Pathfinder.
yeah.
And I think that with fifth edition, they really hit it out of the park and returning to kind of like their niche or whatever you want to call it. They went back to their ballpark,
Mm.
and they played to their strengths, and they listened to their players, and they made a great rule set. And I think that they know that they need to do something with fifth edition, and they don't want to release a million supplements because that was a mistake they made in third edition. But they also don't want to alienate players like they did with fourth edition.
Hmm.
So I think it just makes sense to do something where they're like, I feel like it's a good thing for them to get away from like the naming convention of an
Yeah,
edition.
yeah,
That way players can stop focusing on stuff like that. And I love that they're saying that all the current content is going to be compatible with the new stuff. That's a great direction for it to go. That way you don't feel like you have to buy something or that you've wasted money on something that you've already bought. Because there's people out there that have bought a bunch of these adventures and they haven't run them. And if a new edition came out, in 2 years or next year or whatever, they probably still wouldn't have run them. So they would feel like they've wasted money on those books, and that's not going to be the case now. You can still run those books in one D&D, which is awesome.
yeah. Which is really cool. And you also have to think about the fact that fifth edition was really like so successful, and it brought in such a
Oh yeah,
large amount of like new players. And so all these new players that are not used to this like edition change, it was smart of them not to be like, well, here's a new rule set. Here's not, we're saying no, here's the rule set, but we're just going to make it better, which was just like I cannot complain. Like I think that's a genius play. You don't want to upset that. You don't want to split the fan base again. You don't want to go down your like learn like make the past mistakes. Like I think they're doing a really good job, and I really think, and I'm actually really excited about the stuff that they're putting out. Um, and
yeah,
the new rules
and
that I've seen so far, like I'm excited. Like I'm on board. Let's go.
Yeah, so we'll definitely jump into that. So what Eddie was just hinting at there or alluding to, he's getting ahead of us in the broadcast, but uh along with this announcement, they actually released playtest materials for Ond D&D. Now it's not a lot, it's just some character creation stuff, but it's really cool and it's enough to wet your whistle, but we'll kind of jump into that in a minute.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, and I think the big thing I want to give them props for is don't fix something that's not broken. And fifth edition's not broken. They didn't need to develop a whole new rule set.
Mm-mm.
Just more content is fine. And streamline, clean up, take some opportunities to fix some of the weird wording issues that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide and hopefully expand the bestiary a little bit. Like if I had one real complaint with fifth edition, it's that the bestiary is very limiting. At least if you're sticking to first party stuff, which if you're a DM out there and you're not using third party monster manuals, you're doing it wrong.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's a little harsh, but you're missing out. I'll say you're missing out on a great opportunity because there's a lot of really great third-party monster manuals.
Yeah. That is a part of the this that I can't really speak on since I've never really ran a fifth edition, so I've never actually took the time to go and look at that side of it. So I'll definitely have to bow to your expertise.
Yeah. But let's talk about the playtest stuff that they put out for a minute. We're not experts on it, but we certainly have read through it,
Mhm.
and I thought there was a couple of really big changes that jumped out at me. Number one is they kind of confirmed slash codified the new way that they're going to do races, and
Mhm.
that your attribute bonuses aren't tied to your race. And I love that. I think that's the right direction for the game.
Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't limit you to being able to play certain classes with certain races. Now, like, granted, there's not like a limit. You could still play an orc bard, but like that's not your optimal play. So most people, it's like the races were designed and where they were like the points that they got. It always tended to steer you towards a certain like class where now you can do that. You can play, if you just have this concept in your brain about, man, I really like the idea of this orc bard who thinks he's a great singer, but he yodels all the time, or just whatever, and you can play that because now orcs don't aren't just like locked into that +2 strength and so forth. So like,
Yeah. Well, it's also, at the end of the day, D&D is about telling stories with your friends.
yeah,
And the whole tying your this mechanical benefit to your race, in terms of like the raw attributes, was always something that like I think people felt hampered by more often than they felt like they were rewarded by.
hmm,
Like, because even people that are really interested in the telling the story part, they're not gonna like actively disadvantage themselves by picking a race that gives a negative to their prime stat,
yeah,
right? Because like even people that are more interested in telling the story than the actual like nuts and bolts of the combat still don't want to like make a character that's bad, quote unquote.
yeah,
And really that's so the way the races used to work anyway,
yeah,
it really like kind of pushed you in a direction.
hmm,
And I'm sure we're gonna get a comment of somebody going like, "Well, Mason, I made a bard that had -2 charisma from attribute." I understand that there's exceptions to everything, but
yeah,
I think most people probably, whenever they chose a class that they wanted to play, their first thing that they did when they were choosing a race is say to themselves, "Okay, what gives me a bonus to my charisma or whatever?"
yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's part of the game, right? You want to make a cool, interesting character that does cool and interesting things, and making sure you have a good prime stat is a big way of doing that.
hmm,
And now you don't have to worry about that. Now you can say, I've got this story. I want to play, a gnome barbarian or whatever. Now
hmm,
you don't have to be like worried about that, like both disadvantaging you or disadvantaging your party because of you being there. And I just think that that's a great way to take the game. Let's focus on the stories that we want to tell and the memories that we're going to make, and let's let the mechanical thing just be separate to that, and let those things work together instead of kind of fight each other. Um, and I think the other big change that kind of jumped out at me, and I'm sure the more I read it, the more some of the stuff is going to be like, obvious to me that there's big changes. But I thought the change to critical hits was a big one. So now spells can't crit anymore. It's just weapon or unarmed attacks.
yeah, and that
And that
that, that feels so, I don't know, mm, biased. I felt like it was kind of I don't know how I feel about that one. I think that one might be a miss, but I mean we'll have to play it and see. But
Yeah,
um,
so we're gonna play it. We're gonna play it for this for at least a stretch in this campaign. I have a feeling that this is gonna be a rule that a lot of people choose to ignore and do it the old way. But this is an unearthed arcana, right? This is just a playtest, so maybe if
yeah,
they get enough feedback, they'll roll it back. It feels like a weird change to me, and I know a lot of the argument from people is going to be something along the lines of, well, they need to balance martial classes and spell classes, and my answer to that is like, just spell classes aren't more powerful than martial classes because of damage spells. It's the all the other spells.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
the
yeah,
buffing and debuffing spells that are like way more powerful than what martial characters can do.
yep,
At any rate, it's a weird change, but also it affects more than just spells, right? So it's just weapon or unarmed attacks. So sneak attack dice isn't going to work. Um, if you have like the weapon master, or sorry, the battle master dice, like if they do extra damage on stuff, they won't count for critical hits. Um, so yeah, it's interesting stuff. We'll have to see how it plays at the table. Um,
yeah,
we're gonna certainly give it a try.
yeah.
I think that this is going to be one of those that if it stays, it's going to be a rule that I probably ignore going forward, and just let spells critical hit, because I don't think that spells critical hitting are like a problem. But we'll
I,
see. We'll see.
I agree. I don't think that's a big problem. Of all the games we've ever played, I don't think that's ever really come up with an issue that just like took over the game. So like I don't like it's not broken or anything to me, like personally. And I'm sure some people out there probably have some stories they're gonna hit in the comments and be like, if you do, it's fine. Tell us. I don't mind. We'll share some stories. But me personally, I've never experienced or seen an issue with it. So I don't. It like Max was saying. I just don't think that the damage spells are the problem with those classes. So like getting rid of the crit just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and also this is a whole discussion for a separate video, so I don't want to go too far down this road.
Yeah.
Um, but I actually don't think you have to balance spell classes versus non-spell classes.
No.
I don't think balance should be a reason for major design decisions for D&D, because like balance doesn't matter that much. Like obviously you don't want players feeling like their character is outshined in all scenarios. You want to make sure everybody has like a thing to do to shine.
Yeah.
But I don't think that, this isn't like a competitive game where you want like make sure all sides are equal.
Yeah.
But that's again, I don't want to get into this argument because like this is that's a whole topic for a totally different video. Right now, what we're excited about is this Ond D&D announcement. So
Yeah.
the second part of the announcement was their
Well, hold on.
virtual
Hold on.
tabletop that
Hold on.
they're making.
Hold on. I'm not done.
Oh, oh, oh,
There's a
oh, you're
there's a
not.
there's
I'm
a there's
sorry.
a there's
I'm sorry.
another
Now I'm
pretty
getting ahead.
yeah, there's another pretty like important thing that they brought in with this new character creation concept.
Oh,
And
yes,
that's
you're
and
right.
that's
You're
that's
right.
backgrounds and the ability to create your own background, which I was very much like opposed to, and Mason can tell you as we talked about it at first. But the more I actually got down and sat down and started creating a character, and I went through the process and I built my own background, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. And they still have like the background options because, like, for me personally, for you out there, when I create a character, I like to use the background. I basically sometimes, depending on how I roll, sometimes I do it backwards, sometimes I do it forwards, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But so sometimes I find inspiration out of my backgrounds that I just randomly choose and build a story off of that. And so I was like, I don't know if I like that, but because there's options still there and the way you can build your background and it's so cool. um, you can go through and you can pick your own like your own traits that you're going to get bonuses to. You can pick your own languages. You can pick your own starting gear. You can just have 50 gold and go nuts. Like it's really interesting and great. And I can't. I'm on board. I think it's such a great idea because I know some people have
Yeah.
always had a hard time when they're doing character creation. You have to pick a background. There's only so many options, so you have to go through 17 different books try to find the right one. Well, not anymore. Just build your own background and call it what you want to kind of go to your backstory, and we'll call it a day. And it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's definitely awesome, and kind of tertiary to that I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention is that feats don't look like they're going to be
Yeah,
optional rules anymore.
yeah,
It seems like they're going to go, kind of feats are kind of baked in now. And I mean, first of all, I don't know many tables that weren't playing with the optional feats rule to begin with, but uh I think the game's more interesting with feats. I think giving players more ways to customize and tell the exact kind of story or have the exact kind of fantasy about their character as they can is better. The more you do that, the better the game is. So I'm a big fan of feats. I think
Yeah.
we've used feats from day one with fifth edition. I've never ran a campaign where I said no to feats. So
Yep.
um,
Yep. No.
ultimately, it's a thing though that like if it stayed optional, it wouldn't offend me because I'm just going to choose to use it. But I think it just them just accepting that that's going to be part of the core design is probably better.
Yeah, and the first level feats were such a cool concept, and then there's like these other specialty feats that you can do that's optional. That you can start with like damaged limbs to get take some negatives while also getting some bonuses. So yeah, I'm on board with feats. I like feats. It's one of my favorite things about Pathfinder. So like I'm glad that they're doing more with it.
Yeah, and they're also it seems like they're introducing the system of like leveled feats.
Yeah.
Now we don't have a lot. This Unearthed kind of really is just about your character's origin,
Hmm.
not even all of character creation, just like your race and who you are. But the feats are labeled as first level feats, and the rules document refers to when you're making a character, you choose a first level feat.
Hmm.
Now, the implication of that is there are other leveled feats. Now, that might be wrong. There might just be two buckets of feats, right?
Yeah.
There might be the level one bucket and then the rest of them. But
Yeah.
I would assume that if they're going to go through and they didn't call them starter feats, they called them level one feats.
That
So
that's true.
I'm going to assume I'm going to assume that there's going to be more levels of feats as we get deeper into this playtest. Um, but who knows? We'll see. Definitely keep a lookout for that though. But are you? Is it okay now, Eddie? Do I have your permission for us to move to the next segment?
Yeah, you have my permission. Go ahead.
Okay, I think we've covered everything. But um, so the next big announcement, the next big part of the announcement was that now that they've acquired D&D Beyond,
Hmm.
they want to create a full digital experience with D&D Beyond. And what they mean by that is basically it sounds like what they want to do is make a virtual tabletop a la Fantasy Grounds or Roll20
Yeah.
Foundry in the D&D Beyond app. And they want to make a bunch of 3D assets and 3D models for miniatures and let you do everything through D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
I have opinions about this. I'll let you go first, though, Eddie. What was your initial reaction to this announcement?
I was excited. I really like the concept that they mentioned about being able to edit your miniatures to change out weapons as you like get new weapons and like have your own look and the kind of moddable. And it's really one of the things that I miss most about. I say one. It's like one of because there's several things about us not being able to play in real life anymore. We play a lot virtually mostly now. Is playing with the miniatures and it's the different types of terrain that you can build, and now that they're finding a way to bring that and it being so closely linked with D&D Beyond, which is a really good resource. Um, so I think that's a really good idea. I can't blame them for that. It's a good one-stop shop, and if I hope they do it right because I'm excited.
Yeah, so my initial reaction was excitement,
Hmm.
especially when I heard they were going to start selling bundles for physical content and digital
Oh
content. So
yes, thank you.
you'll get a PDF with the book copy. And I've been saying
Yeah,
since 5th edition launched that they should just do that. It's so dumb that they don't. But
yeah,
they're fixing that, so I won't sit here and rant about that. I was very happy to hear that.
yeah.
Um, but I have a lot of questions, and the more I've sat with the virtual tabletop side, the more worries I have. I would say right now I would describe my state of mind towards it as cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
And the things I'm worried about are okay. So Eddie just said we play online. Right now we use Roll20,
Mm.
and mostly we use Roll20 because we've used it forever, and I own a bunch of content on Roll20, including a lot of D&D supplements.
Mm.
And with this one D&D thing, am I going to have to buy those again? I'm assuming so. I don't think there's going to be any way for them to give credit. They're going to want my money just like Roll20 got it.
Yeah,
But
probably.
um and so that kind of got me to thinking that it's going to turn into kind of a Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Discovery Plus situation because D&D is going to want to pull their all their stuff off of Roll20 and Fantasy
Mm.
Grounds now, right? Because like they have their own thing, so they're going to want you to use their thing, not the other thing. So like they're probably going to stop supporting all their content launches on other digital tabletops.
Hmm. That's a good point. I did not consider that, and I hope that's not true. But
So
history
there's
is not on
people
our
out there.
side.
So there's people out there that play on fantasy grounds as well as Roll20 that have spent hundreds of dollars
Yeah.
in these shops to play the games that they want to play.
Yeah.
And like, so we're going to get into this weird situation potentially. Again, we don't, this is all speculation. We don't have any information hard on this yet. But those people that have poured time and resources and sweat and tears into developing a library on their virtual tabletop of choice, if D&D stops being supported on those other platforms, those people are going to have a choice to make. Either they're going to have to choose to keep playing on those platforms and just not have any officially supported material anymore going forward, or having to do it themselves. You know, they can't buy the stuff off the shop like they can now, or they're going to have to rebuy all of the stuff they've already paid for to build a library in D&D Beyond. And I think that that's going to be a crappy situation. And you know, it might end up being better in the future anyway. Like I think most people probably will use the Wizards of the Coast of option if it's better,
Yeah.
which I have no doubt that it's going to be good. I'm just really concerned about, you know, this part of it, right?
Mm.
Like it's almost like the content wars for streaming services all over again. Is
Mm.
like I can just see it like playing out. Um, and anyway, I have concerns about that, and how they're going to handle that exactly. And you know, maybe these concerns are completely unfounded. I hope so. Maybe it is going to be simple, and you can, you know, they're still going to keep supporting launches on other platforms. But uh, as you said, history is not kind in that regard. But we'll just have to see. We'll
Yeah.
just have to see.
I mean, there's money on the line, and
Absolutely,
and
and they're a business, and they have to make good business decisions, right?
yeah.
Like
Yep.
so.
And pushing that to grow D&D Beyond is a sound financial decision on their part, but is it the best decision for the fans, the players? You know, who knows? But probably not. And you know, I don't think that everybody's going to lose access to their stuff they've already bought. Of course not.
No, I don't think that.
But
I'm not
but
worried about
yeah,
that.
but like now there, then you're right, and that's a good point. That you know, at some point we may see where these different programs, different platforms will no longer be getting the new stuff, and so well, like, can you still play on those when after it? Of course, you can still get the digital copies and still look it up yourself, but you won't have that easily accessible. Click there and see this rule you need to do, or like you know, have
Yeah.
the character sheets linked straight to the spells, where you can just click it and it adds it onto the spell. Like those types of things, we may see go to the wayside if you're not using D&D Beyond.
Honestly, I've bought on Roll20. I have bought every Monster Manual style supplement that
Mm.
Wizards has sold through the Roll20 shop. Just because as a dungeon master, having all of the monsters already attached to a token with a character sheet on them that I can just drag and drop saves me so much time and prep that like I'm just gonna buy it. Every single one they put out, I'm gonna buy
I,
every time.
I
It's just it saves me way too much time.
I can definitely say that that's probably a nice time saver. You know, my only real DM experience has been with Vampire the Masquerade, and that was a nightmare. Because they give you
Yeah, yeah.
tokens, but they don't link them to the and you had to. Oh man, ah, I don't want to go there. But anyway,
Um, so okay, so that was just part one of some of my concerns with this
oh, there's
new.
more.
Or
Okay.
yes, that was part one, and this next part, I won't say it's a concern as much as I have curiosity for it. So right now, one of the awesome things about Roll20 is that let's say I wanted you guys to have a fight on the top of a train.
Hmm.
I can just go to Google, I can type in top of train battle map and hit enter. And I'm going to
Hmm.
get like 70 results for some other nerd that's had an idea for an encounter on the top of a train
Yeah.
that's drawn the map and put it on the internet. I can just download it, load it straight into our Roll20 campaign. And the same night, we are having an epic encounter on the top of a train.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That could never happen in a 3D environment right
Yes.
now,
I
as technology is right now.
I
So
completely agree that yes, that's a concern. But
like I said, I wouldn't even call it a concern, right? I'm more curious as to
yeah.
how flexible these models are going to be. How much work is it going to take for me as a DM to build a modular dungeon?
Uh-huh.
right? Because that's another question is that they said that they want this to where like we can build our own adventures. So this tool is going to need to be intuitive and easy,
Yeah.
right? Because like if it's something that's hard, like I could see me going, guys, look, let's just keep playing on Roll 20 because it's like it's so much work to play on D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but I
me
mean, we're just gonna have to see. That's one of the curious things to me. The other one is
well, hold on. Let me
like
let me let me
how.
let me let me
Oh,
let me
sorry. Go ahead.
let me respond here. Like,
Okay.
I
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I don't think that it would be that hard to just, yes, they're having these nice fancy 3D model maps, but what's to say that you can't just load in this regular, 2D picture and
Sure.
still do the same thing? It just
Absolutely.
won't be as fancy looking,
Yep.
and that's fine. You still play. I'm not saying
I
I'm not
hope
saying
that's
they
the route they go.
I'm not saying they will or won't do any of this, but I'm like, it just doesn't seem like it would be that hard to make that an option.
It doesn't, but there's been a lot of games or things that have easy options that seem common sense that never get implemented.
Okay,
So,
yeah, you have a
uh,
good point there.
at any rate, and the other thing is like how it's going to work for like creating 3D models. I wonder how hard it's going to be in their infrastructure. Like, because right now people are making all kinds of awesome STLs for 3D printing
Hmm.
for creatures and, Warhammer minis and D&D minis.
Terrain,
Like,
yeah.
I wonder how hard it's going to be to bridge that gap between I've got this STL that I could print. How do I take that next step and load it in as a model on D&D Beyond? Like,
Yeah,
because I want to know like if D&D Beyond is going to have like a really good system for the communities to submit assets like that, like miniatures or monsters or maps, or are we going to be pretty much stuck playing with like the pre-made Legos, right?
yeah.
Like, are they going to give us a castle that we can take apart and put together in different like variations, or are we going to be able to do like anything? And that's basically my big questions. Those aren't as much concerns as the
Yeah.
like actual availability of content. They're just curiosities, right? Um,
Yep. And
I'll say this: like when D&D Beyond comes out, we are definitely going to try it. We
yeah,
will 100% give it a try.
I'm game. I think it's a really cool concept, and I hope
Yeah.
they do it right, because if they do it right, and if they play the cards just right, then they won't have to necessarily shut down these other platforms having access to them, because that's just going to be the better option. Like, why would you not? Um, but who knows? But I am excited about it, and I hope that they do a good job with it. Um, it's one of those things where you never know what's actually going to get until we get it. But I think that the points that you're making is definitely the curiosities and the concerns. The map building stuff that you were talking about. I'm excited about that, and I hope that they do it right. I really do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a lot of faith in the design team over at Dungeons and Dragons right now. So it's a wait and see, and it's a great time to play D&D right now. I'll say that.
Yeah,
These are exciting times to be a role playing nerd.
yeah,
Um, I mean, the game's more popular than it's ever been, and with that, they're going to have the confidence and the funding, more importantly, to do all kinds of things that they probably never thought were possible 10 years ago.
oh, I mean, yeah, we already are. We're there, but no, it's definitely a really cool time, and they're making all the right plays right now. So like they've got my confidence, they got my faith. I'm willing to give them a shot, and see how this is going to play out. I think we're going to be fine, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those situations where um, you just gotta wait and see. I mean, what else
Yep,
can you do?
yep. And so what about you guys out there at home listening to the broadcast here? How do you guys feel? Like, are you guys excited for one D&D? Are you excited for the virtual tabletop? Do you have concerns? Do you have things you're worried about?
Yeah.
Um, let us know in the comments because a video I actually want to do in the very near future is I want to do an unpacking session with fifth edition, an 8 year retrospective, and talk about what I think fifth edition did well and what I think it struggles with and changes I'm hoping to see in one D&D. So if you have something you want me to address in that video, let me know down in the comments.
Yeah.
At any rate, thank you guys so much for listening. We super appreciate you. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, we would sure appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. Sure does help us out a bunch. And if you like the video, like it, share it, all those fancy things. And if not, you know what? Thanks for listening anyway. We love you guys, and we will see you next time.